return back to the office. And there you go, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So while we're letting a few more people in, full house today, which is really exciting. I guess I should introduce myself for those who do not know. My name is Jill. I am the client success and event specialist here with Amala Vida. I'm also a certified health and wellness coach with a specialty in self-confidence. So I get to do lots of fun things here. And of course, one of my favorites is being able to put together really awesome events for our clients and our communities, which is what we get to do here today. A few logistics. So because we do have a pretty good group today, we always invite you to put all of your chats, comments, questions, anything you want. You can introduce yourselves in the chat box, but we have that chat box at the bottom for you to engage, network, ask the coaches questions. Please, we do ask you to stay on mute throughout, because like I said, lots of people here today, but we will have time at the end for Q&A. My video is going to go off, but I'm still going to be here watching the chat box. So any questions that you have, go ahead and put them right in there, and we'll just scan those at the end. Make sure that we have time to ask Betsy and Natalia. Lastly, this is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording and recap along with some other resources and how to stay connected with Betsy and Natalia in the recap email that will go out tomorrow. And that includes the recording. So that's always the popular question of the day. Is this being recorded? Yes. All right, that is enough chit chat from me. I'm gonna go hand it over to Betsy and Natalia. Thank you ladies so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, all. Natalia and I will both introduce ourselves in a couple minutes more thoroughly. And also, I'm noticing there are a couple other Amala Vida coaches on the line. So welcome to you guys. And like the rest of our participants, please lean in on the chat. Really, we want to have a robust conversation. So we all kind of understand there are a lot of other people going through this experience over the next days, weeks, and months together, and we can learn from each other and get some tips and tools to manage and navigate through the next phase. We're really, really thrilled to be able to be with you guys today, and we too, like you, are exploring what a return to work may look like for ourselves, for our family members, for our clients, for our coworkers. Some of us are leading teams, some of us are being led by amazing managers or leaders. And believe me, as we work with our clients, we're learning they too are exploring what's going to make sense, not only for all the people in their office and on their team, but for themselves. So this is a really unique time where significant changes and waves of change are impacting so many of us in so many different ways. When Natalia and I first started talking about hosting this webinar, things were really different. It was a couple months ago, and I don't think any of us were as clear as we are now that by so many people being able to get vaccinated, that things would be returning to whatever normal was going to be, both for our personal lives and our professional lives. But here we are. I mean, things are reopening. As a matter of fact, I live here in Illinois, and I was just told and then went to double check that our governor has pretty much committed that by June 11th, which is only a week from tomorrow, the entire state will be reopened back to normal. Now, what that means for all of us returning to work, who knows? But I think it just kind of sent chills down my spine. So we're in a different place. And our goal today is to share our information, stories, and ideas with all of you to hear what's on your mind, what you're learning, what excites you about returning to the office, what feels daunting or frightening still, and how are you managing just not knowing what a return to work is going to look and feel like. We really hope you'll take away from this hour together your own return to work goals and objectives and some new ideas for what a successful next 12 months will look like for you. And I kind of am throwing out the 12 months just because we had to pick some time frame. So I really encourage you to lean in the chat with questions, stories, ideas, anything that comes to mind, and Jill will help us navigate that. Natalia and I are both coaches at Ama La Vida. I guess since I'm starting the presentation, I'll introduce myself first. I came to coaching from the corporate world. I also have some deep experience in the non-for-profit world. I started my career as an attorney and pretty quickly, about 4 or 5 years in corporate America, evolved into a marketing and strategic alliances role. I've done a number of different things, and you can read my bio on our website, but most of my clients now, and I see a couple clients on the line, as a matter of fact, are people navigating their growth trajectory within any kind of organization, be it small, medium, or large, or even entrepreneurs trying to develop a path forward. We talk about the things that typically are in their purview, like I know these things are obstacles for me or opportunities. And we also try to look for the things that if we take the blinders off, become available to us. It's really fun work where we have opportunities to talk about both personal and professional goals. And if you want to know more, we'll have a chance to catch up towards the end of the webinar today. Natalia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. My name's Natalia. I'm a life and career coach here. My background is very different from Betsy's. I studied psychology and really struggled a lot through my early 20s to figure out what I wanted to do. So I collected a lot of different experiences in nonprofit, in marketing, in design, and culminated all of that. And how can I bring all of that into helping other people create lives and careers that they love? I love working with clients that really believe that their work is just another part of life. There's no like real work-life separation. It's all life, which I think probably the pandemic has shown all of us more than we wanted to see, how life and work are like just so intricately connected. So I like really focusing on creating boundaries and creating habits that help you thrive both in your life and career. And a lot of my clients really work on how can you create a holistic life that your career is a part of, but everything else matters too. And how do they support each other?
Great, thank you. So just really quickly, if you guys feel like it, and you may or may not feel like it, just tap into the chat whether you've ever worked with a coach before, either a coach that's been provided to you through your work, in a group coaching session that's been provided to you for work, or somebody that you've reached out to on your own. We're always curious to know what people's experience is with coaching. At Ama La Vida, as you can sense, Jill is a health coach. Natalia is a coach who sort of navigates the space between work and life. I'm primarily a leadership coach, and I think we have a couple coaches on the line who are career coaches. Yes, all of these things blend together, but at Ama La Vida, many of our clients come to us thinking that their focus is in one of these primary areas. One of the many things that makes Ama La Vida a unique coaching company is that if we start working with one-on-one with a client, and we sense the client is shifting to explore some topics that are in a different category, then we will recommend that they work for a session or two with a different coach. We call those celebrity sessions, but long story short, we're there to meet your needs. We're there to meet you where you are. And the picture up here is a picture of the two founders who started our company and are still very involved. Forum, who you see on your right, is actually also a coach. Nicole is more the chief operating officer of the company. But what we'll talk about today, unless you guys take us off track with some interesting ideas that we haven't thought of yet, and you'll share those with us in the chat, but we've developed a return to work framework. Really, that is a chance to know oneself. Where am I? What am I thinking? What are the obstacles? How am I getting my mind in the game right now about what work is going to look like for me over the next X amount of months? What are other people thinking? Both my teammates, my clients, my family, and how am I going to take their needs and expectations into account? We're going to talk a little bit about some recommendations on tools to communicate what you need to succeed. And of course, that always includes setting boundaries. Never the easiest part. And then a plan for managing all the possibilities, because if there's one thing we've learned over the past 18 months, is that all plans may have to go to the wayside as things change on a minute-by-minute basis. Anybody have anything else that they're hoping we'll be talking about today? And if so, please share those in the chat. And I know Jill will share those with us as well. There are a myriad of facts floating around out there about whether or not people want to return to the office, what companies and organizations are doing about return to work, all the implications, et cetera. So we pulled a few facts. I'll just throw these your way. Long story short, most employers are saying that remote work has been a very huge success for both the employees and employers. There are psychological reasons. There are financial savings that people can measure. There is a savings of time and energy that people are reporting. And the shift has been very evident. As a matter of fact, 83% of employers now say the shift to remote work has been successful for their company, compared to 73% almost a year ago. That being said, we think the office is still here to stay. People aren't going to give up their offices, and I'm sure many of you are being asked to return to work in some capacity. Maybe type in now whether your organization has asked you to return to work either part-time, full-time, or in some sort of a hybrid model. But the office is going to be a little bit different, and the focus on managing expectations around some people being in the office and some out of the office is going to become more acute and interesting than ever. And that's a space that we're spending a lot of time talking about at Ama La Vida. Simple fact, 55% of employees report they'd prefer to be remote at least 3 days a week. And we're going to talk about some of the drivers of that. And of course, we don't know the demographics of the people on the call, but we are hearing through statistics that employees with less years of experience working are more likely to want to be in the office, that they feel they're not as productive when they're out of the office. So that's just interesting for those of you who are either in that demographic or working closely with people who are in that demographic. And you can see this study was done just in April by PwC. Maybe somebody's on the call who works there. So we're going to take our first pause. As a coach, and Natalia will agree with this as well, the first thing we like to do with our clients is try to get our minds wrapped around the headspace of what's really going on for us. What's literally going on? What are the expectations that are being placed on us? What is our head telling us we need to do? And what is our head begging us not to do? And so the first thing I'd like to do is just ask everybody to take, 20 seconds and just think, what is going on for you? And share with us what's one positive thing that's going on for you in your life right now. So I'll give you 15 or 20 seconds to add something to the chat. I'll start with the positive thing that's going on for me, which is as the weather has improved in Chicago so much, the decision I made during COVID to block out 2 early morning hours for myself have just paid off in spades. So I'm just loving the opportunity to be outside with my dog, try to eat a healthy breakfast, get showered, cleaned up, clean up my workspace before anyone's having any expectations of me. Natalia, how about you?
Yeah, I actually have had everyone in my family and friend group get vaccinated, and I had a celebratory birthday dinner over the weekend, which was just a little slice of getting to spend time with my friends and family again was really good, and it's made my whole week so much better. And I think I see a lot of people in the chat saying being able to be social and seeing friends and family has been great. So I think that's a common feeling among everyone.
Great. And it's just so nice to take this pause and realize that, we are coming out of the crisis part of this circumstance and that there are some really nice things that are starting to happen in our lives. So thank you for that.
Great.
So I'll bounce it to Natalia for a moment.
Yeah. So we know it's hard to kind of put words around how you're feeling, where you fall in like these complex feelings about going back to the office, staying remote. Like there's a lot to juggle. So we tried to create a framework to help you name how you're feeling and where you're at. By no means is this framework final or decisive. It's very flexible and it can be adapted to yourself, to your office and your colleagues if you'd like. But it will just help us kind of talk through however everyone is feeling and where you might fall. So here you'll see there's two axes. One of them is the social emotional axis, we've called it. And on one end is this collaborative, people who tend to be socially motivated and like being around people or maybe even loud environments. And then independent, so people who might be intrinsically motivated, enjoy deep work or uninterrupted chunks of time. And then you can fill in any other things that kind of come to mind when you think of these two extremes. And then the other axis is physical environmental axis. So what does your physical space or your environment need to look like? So from being flexible and enjoying variety and freedom of time, which I know a lot of people mentioned in the chat, to craving structure and routine on the other end and wanting this very clear separation of work and life. And like I said, feel free to add in any words that might be in here when you think of these two axes that might help you define where you're at. So we came up with some user personas based on our own experiences, clients that we've worked with, kind of where they fall and what that looks like to help you define where you fall. So this is just 4 out of the million that could exist on this. You could fall anywhere on this axis, but just to give you an example, if we start from the top left and going around. So when you think of Joan being in this flexible collaborative space, you're thinking of a person who loves to work with her team, loves spontaneous chances to maybe walk to get coffee or get lunch with coworkers, but she enjoys traveling and never really loved the 9-to-5 schedule. So working from home has given her flexible hours, the ability to take breaks. And now going back to the office is this back and forth of, oh, I love spending time with people, but I might miss my flexibility. Thomas is on the other end. So this is what you think of like an extrovert through and through, people who thrive and get energized by social interactions, also loves routines and schedules. So going into the office every day allowed him to mentally prepare and then check out when he was changing his physical space, going home. Jorge is a person who enjoys routine and really likes having work hours, but his job consists of needing times of uninterrupted time to get his work done. But also, just to throw in all the life things that could have happened, is he had a child during the pandemic. So splitting parenting duties, doing the child rearing thing while working from home has been much easier and much more cost effective. And then lastly, we have Naya. So Naya is someone, she's a developer. She works mostly head down independent work. And at the office, she can get easily distracted. So working at home has been really the best thing for her. And then she's also getting a master's degree online. So she's juggling multiple things, and having this flexibility and not having to commute to the office really saves time and gives her a lot of time to do what she wants. So with those 4 kind of personas in mind, I want you all to take a little second to think, where do you fall on the axis? So we'll scroll to the next slide and kind of see some examples of drivers that might really inspire you to return to work. So FOMO, fear of missing out. You're sick of your 4 walls of your own apartment or your house. You want to get ready and go to work and wear cute clothes, or your lines of work-life balance are beginning to blur. So you're ready to get back to that. And
I'll
then
just
the
add
next,
in here,
oh, yeah.
Natalia, really quickly. Are we missing anything, guys? Is there anything that makes any of you just really excited to return to work that's not on here? We'd love to hear it.
Yep. And then as you type those in there, also on the other side of the coin, so people who are pretty happy working from home, there's some things in there that might make working from home a good thing, like not having to commute or just being afraid about being around people again. And feel free to type into the chat any other reasons that are really making you lean towards like this remote work thing is actually pretty good and I like it for my life.
One thing that we've noticed as we've been talking to our clients a lot and doing research is a big reminder that even before everything that changed with COVID, there were many situations where many of us were working at home, either because that was the structure for our position, or we were home with a sick family member, or for a doctor's appointment, or maybe we were traveling for work and leaning into phone calls and maybe Zoom calls even then from a remote location. So everything about remote is not new. It's just that we all experienced remote together over the past 12 months. And so it really was a sea change in terms of expectations and changes. Anything popping up in the chat that I'm not seeing the chat, so that we should add and share with some of the drivers?
Yeah, face-to-face discussion is something that was on there. And then Kim shared communication, it's easier at home. So there's not a struggle of finding a meeting room that's open or the commute from room to room. At the office, more chances to solve small problems or queries straight away, easier to get in touch with colleagues, and easy coordination of labs and tools. And then going back to work means hour-long commute each way. And the team is in other locations anyways. So that's still hybrid. And yeah, so a lot of that. No quiet spaces at the office.
Great.
Yeah.
Is anybody talking at all, or is anybody still, and no judgment in this, feeling a little bit afraid to get on the bus, afraid to get on the L, afraid to walk down a busy, crowded street? Is anyone still sensing like, ugh, I just still don't know if I want to be around a lot of people?
Yes, there's a couple yeses there. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, again, as coaches, there's an ebb and flow in our heightened concern right now. And our best recommendation to all of you is around, and Jill could probably lean into this, but naming it. I am still afraid. I am still worried. I am still curious if other people are vaccinated, whatever. I'm angry that they're asking me to come back to the office, whatever it is. We find that trying to get really, really present around what that emotion is, that feeling, and naming it, then you can claim it, and then you can make a productive decision about how you're going to work with that, what that may look like. So as opposed to shying away and feeling badly that we may be a little bit afraid or angry or whatever the emotion is, let's claim it, let's own it, and let's work our way around it. Okay.
All right. So now that we kind of went through the different user personas, the reasons you might want to return to work or work remote, where are you on this axis and on this framework that we created? So if you scroll to the next one, we'll put it back up so you can get a sense of it. So starting from the top left around, we'll just do 1, 2, and then the bottom left is 3, and the bottom the bottom right is 3 and the bottom left is 4. And just pop in the chat, like, where do you feel like you fall in this axis? Some 4s in there. So in the flexible independent quadrant. 3.
And while you guys are throwing that in, I think I'll toss this way too, which is what has been the biggest the biggest change that you've noticed as a professional person working from home over the past 12 months? If there's something that's really jumping out at you. I'm more productive when I'm in my pajamas. I'm more productive when I'm sitting at my desk with a closed door. What is it? What are the things that you're noticing? Okay. Oh, you know where you are. What comes next? Natalia, you want to carry on?
Yeah. So a lot of what I was seeing in the chat too is that idea of uncertainty and what's next. So part of this that we are hoping that you get out of this is being able to name where you are, how you're feeling, and then also what are your needs. Whether that's your personal needs and how you show up for yourself, and your professional needs of what you need your manager to, how you need them to show up, your team to show up. And then the next layer of this is, what's your office situation? So is your office asking you to come back? And I know some of you mentioned how that transition was going, or does your office not know and they're trying to figure it out? And from that stems 3 different buckets that this could fall into, that we hope to kind of give you some things to consider and tips to think about going into these different situations. So there's the in-person bucket, the remote bucket on the other end, and then the hybrid, which is very common and sort of this middle ground. That's probably the more complex and nuanced one to figure out.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about in-person. And again, please throw real life examples our way so that we can make this definition as robust as possible. But many of us are planning to go back to the office full-time and or being asked to return to the office full-time. If not now, maybe in September or maybe in November. If you are going back to the office full-time because you believe that that's the way the workplace works best, that's the way you work best, but others are in a different place, how are you going to manage your team, yourself, and really your honest feelings about others who have not chosen to return to the office? So there are a million scenarios that you can imagine. You return to the office. You believe that's the best place for you to get work done, for the best place for you to demonstrate that you're ready for a promotion, the best place for you to lead a team collaboratively. But guess what? Your boss isn't coming back. How do you feel about that? What needs to be communicated? What do you need to control for yourself so that your emotions don't get in the way of you being productive at work? Or perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps you're a team lead and you work at an ad agency and the creative director of your account is only going to be in the office 2 days a week. How are you going to manage interacting with that creative director? How are you going to manage communications? What if you are in the office from 9 to 5 and that person remotely, some believes they can work every day from 11 to 7? So how do we start digging into all these issues, getting really clear about our needs and expectations, and asking the right kinds of questions to the people around us? And finally, for those of you who are returning to the office, whether it's something that you've chosen to do or being asked to do, kind of related to the question I asked you before, what changes have you noticed or made for yourself and your work schedule, your work environment, that are important for you to bring with you back in the office? What are the things that you changed or did differently that you can capture, stick in your backpack, and take with you when you head back to the office? And simultaneously, what are the things you let go of when you were working at home that you can permanently push to the side, that you do not need to bring back with you when you return to the office? Finally, for in-person, I just want to say fear of the unknown is sometimes worse than what is actually going on. So maybe as you start preparing to return, you talk to others who have been back over the past weeks or months. Ask them what their experience is like. Maybe you go to visit the office one day, like we used to do when we were school kids to meet our teacher. And you go just to kind of check out things. What are the new rules going to be? Do I wear a mask in the lobby, but not in my office? What's really going to be going on here? You may expect the familiar to seem familiar, i.e., you worked in that office for 3 years before COVID, but it may not be as familiar as you're expecting. So expect the unexpected and decide how you're going to manage the feelings that emerge. Anything I should see in the chat on this topic about returning to work, Natalia or Jill?
Just people sharing their takeaways from what they learned. So some are more productive in the office, some are more productive or less tired when they don't have to do a commute. So a little bit of takeaways and things that they've learned in their new situations.
Great. Thank you. I'll hand it to you now to talk about both remote and hybrid.
Yeah, of course. So with remote, all of us got pushed into remote work, very unexpectedly. So there's been a lot of unplanning that we just kind of said, okay, how do I adapt right now? But not really any long-term planning of how do I make this remote workspace work for me in the long term? So some of the things that we kind of want to talk about to consider is if you're committing to that remote work, where do you work? How can you commit to really creating a professional presence at your work? So at your home. So is that setting up a desk with a background that is professional and clean, or using a virtual background to make sure that, you can have laundry in the back, but no one will know. So how do you create a space that is both professional for the people who are in the office or at their homes, but also for you? So it feels like, okay, when I sit down at this desk, this is when I'm working, and being able to create those boundaries. The second thing is establishing a workable schedule. So what is your schedule? How do you define it? I think a lot of us fell into I work from home, so I work all day and all night, because that's just what felt more natural. But how can we take a step back and zoom out and figuring out, this is my schedule, these are my hours, and now I can communicate with your coworkers, your managers, your friends and family too. So your friends and family, they're like, let's ditch work and go do something in the middle of the day. Does that work for you? Do you like taking breaks, or do you like having your set hours and then having your personal time be your personal time? And then the other thing is really establishing a routine that includes self-care. We'll talk about this more in a little bit, but there's so many things that we kind of forget to do when we're at home, like setting a time to take a lunch break, or including exercise and rest from working from home, unplugging from our devices, right? It's so easy to sometimes be working and then you're also on your phone and also have TV in the background, and you don't notice that you're doing it all at once. So allowing room for you to unplug and not work. And I think there's two pieces of that, right? As a manager, is how do you create that culture now that some people may be working remote and some in the office, of you don't have to work 24/7. That's not critical and it's not healthy. So encouraging people to set your boundaries. And then as someone who is on the team and leading yourself, is what are those boundaries and how can you check in with yourself? So you're showing up to work fully recharged and not just feeling like all your days are sliding into this one blur of work and life and not really having any balance between those. And then the next thing to consider, which I think is what we're going to see a lot of, is this hybrid work team. It's likely to be a new normal of not everyone returns to work and not everyone works from home. So what is this going to look like and what should we consider? Betsy and I were listening to a podcast recently that talked about this thing called distance or location bias. So this is a tendency that our brains have to put more importance on a thing, an object, a person that's close to us versus those are there that are far away. So if we take that distance bias and apply it to this hybrid work team, like knowing that, what would you want to do differently? How can you be aware of that bias and make sure that it doesn't permeate into your work culture, into how you speak with the people you manage, or how you communicate with your manager, even if they're not near you? And then the next thing to consider is some of these role, remote decisions is really role-based. Who needs to be in the office? So some of us may be expected to be in the office 100% of the time because our work, we have to work with tools or a lab or just the physical space that we're working with. That work can't be done from home. And then some people may not. So how do you manage your attitude if you're either the person that can work from home or the person that can't? How do we make sense of, sometimes it's just based on the type of work you do, what returning to work looks like? And lastly is performance metrics. So one of the things that we need to really think about now is that we used to really base our performance by, when did you clock in? When did you clock out? Did you sit down at a chair in your office and show up? And now with everyone on the team working from different locations, really results are key. So how can you, when you think about how do I show my performance, what are the results? What is those metrics, or that way that you can show your productivity or represent the way that you're working and communicating when you're available, when you work best, how you can get things done when you take away that physical, I'm sitting at my desk or at my cubicle or in my office. What would that look like in this new hybrid work team or distributed work team?
How many of you on the call, if you would just throw this into the chat, have been told already or expect that you'll be working as a distributed team? Those are the other words that people are starting to use for hybrid work, but that some people will be here, some people will be there, and every day might look a little different. Let us know what you're hearing and how many of you think this is what will be going on for you. Long story short, we're back in a phase of uncertainty. And clearly as coaches, that's one of the things we want to be available to everybody who comes into the AmaLaVida family to help you guys navigate. You want to talk a little bit more about that, Natalia?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest obstacles in planning for this post-pandemic world is that we don't really know what's next. And when we went into the lockdown and all that stuff, we didn't know what was next, but we sort of had to adapt as we went because it happened all of a sudden and we were home, and then we had to figure out as we go. Now, ramping back up to this new normal, we have a little bit more time to ruminate on what's next. What could this look like? What is the best thing for me? What's the best thing for my company? So I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. And some of these things are out of our control. So what we really want to talk about is ways that you can support yourself in navigating this uncertainty. And there's a lot of things here on the list, and it's not inclusive. I think there's a lot more that could be added in here. So we'd love to hear what you do for yourself or what you're planning on doing for yourself to really support yourself through this change. But really the main thread is focusing on what is within your control. So the creating routines and rituals, setting boundaries, taking care of yourself, that's really ways that you can anchor down as everything around you may shift and change over the next 6 to 12 months. Is what things can you make sure are stable and certain? So the uncertainty that goes on around you feels less scary because you have this anchor point or this kind of tether being able to hold onto as things shift and change. And then another thing that I really really love to just talk about is overall is having a sense of self-compassion and giving ourselves a break for not having all the answers. Most of us have never gone through this before. So how can we be kind to ourselves, to our managers, to our coworkers, as we're all sort of stumbling through this experience, and taking care of ourselves as we do it? So feeding yourself well, getting outside, spending time with people you love, or alone if that's what's recharging you. And I'd love to hear a little bit of other ways that you're taking care of yourself or supporting yourself in this really tumultuous, uncertain time.
One of the things that I'm hearing a lot from my clients was that over the past 12 months or so, each day, one of the objectives was to manage through work from home, whatever that might look like for each individual. And now we've gotten into the flow of that, and that mountain doesn't feel as significant to be climbed anymore. So you got rid of that burden of really trying to figure out what the change was going to look like, but they feel a little bit of a void when that big significant objective isn't there. They're grateful, but they also feel a little bit of a void. So that's just an interesting perspective on like, oh, now I get to go back to normal. What is normal and what are my primary goals right now? Just something to consider. Anything else that I should be aware of? Okay. So towards the end of our webinars, we like to ground the learning, the thinking, the consideration by asking all of our attendees to consider what's your biggest takeaway from today, and or what's one new thing you'll practice, ask, try, or do that might have been something you hadn't considered before. Any of the coaches who are on the line want to lean in to get the ball rolling on this? Throw a chat out for us. The biggest thing I'm going to do is ask my coworkers how they're feeling about returning to work. I want to get a little bit deeper understanding of what other people are experiencing. Natalia, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me is really taking time to unplug. I think with the uncertainty, there's this need or anxiety that I have to always be on top of everything, and just giving myself time to really disconnect after work or before work in the mornings, rather than grabbing my phone first thing, is really allowing myself to disconnect from work as I am working from home all the time.
Yeah, great.
And then some things that are in the chat is, yeah, Peggy, being patient with the process and ourselves. Absolutely. And like we mentioned, this is new and unknown to all of us. So being patient and compassionate. There are many possibilities of what workplaces will look like. Absolutely. Lots of uncertainty, extending more grace to others, like I do to myself.
Love that word, grace.
Yes. Asking your team how much they'd like to be in the office. Absolutely. Just getting a sense of how everyone else is feeling. Sharing the quadrant map with your coworkers to open up a discussion. Yeah, that's a great way to kind of map everybody out. How are you feeling? Let's use this quadrant as a way to all be speaking the same language.
Great.
Then building time to recharge during the day, getting outside. These are all really, really great.
Great. Thank you all so much for sharing. This next topic or page is really just a brief discussion on sort of moving forward. Somebody suggested that they might want to share the matrix with their team or others at work. These are topics that you may feel you're prepared to discuss with your team at work, or perhaps even with your family or friends, or perhaps this is an area where coaching is appropriate one-on-one, or maybe you want to bring in somebody to lead a team discussion. But some of the things that are starting to materialize for our clients, and even within our own business, is when some people are in the office and some people are out, or everyone is in or no one is in or whatever. How do you continue to stay focused on driving a culture of inclusion, trust, and fun? You know, we certainly don't want to create an in crowd and an out crowd. And so how do we become cognizant that the people who are around us and who we're interacting with in person day to day may start to become people we think are working harder, doing more, smarter, more creative, or whatever. So, and similarly, who we can trust once people set up their boundaries and still have a little levity and a little fun every day. How do you lead effectively, whether you're just leading yourself or a team while remote, taking into account things that we're all trying to move forward: collaboration, creativity, strategy alignment, and the all-important crisis management. For me, I think one of the biggest things that gets really interesting with having so many people working remotely is this situation with crisis management, where, you know, something comes up and you might not be able to find somebody, where in the olden days, a year ago, that person was sitting right next door. So how are you going to manage a crisis? How do you continue to be persuasive and influential when you may not be in the office, or other people you're trying to be persuasive or influence are not with you? How do you manage your career trajectory? You know, it used to be sort of formulaic about the things you needed to do to impress people around you, to demonstrate your competence, your interest in assuming a more significant role in the organization or whatever. How does that change when you are or are not in the office? And then everything around communication, delegation, feedback, and I'm sure many of you can think of the other topics. So these are things you may want to discuss among yourselves, with your team, or perhaps this is an opportunity to explore coaching. Anybody want to add anything to this list that we're overlooking? Okay, so of course, we're available to support you guys as you return to the office. One of the things we offer at Amalavita are complimentary strategy sessions and or just meet a coach sessions. You can see this bit.ly down below, whether your topic is around leadership, life, career, or health. Both Natalia and I are available to meet with you, and many of the other coaches on our site are still taking new clients as well. And we're happy to do that. We're also happy to brainstorm with you around what might be a relevant and interesting workshop or panel discussion in your office. And Natalia, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I was going to add, I noticed a good amount of you mentioned you'd never had a coaching experience before. So these strategy sessions or these sample sessions are a really good way to get a feel for what coaching can look like for you and how it can support you in meeting your goals or navigating tough conversations as you're going back to work. So it's a really good way to just kind of see how it feels and see if it's what you need right now to support you. And yeah, like Betsy mentioned, both of us are available and have some openings. So that link there is in the one that Jill just shared in the chat. It's a really good way to just get that scheduled and just learn more about Amalavita and how we can support you.
Also, if you're not ready quite yet to, commit to coaching, or you're just not sure, you can get exposed to more of these kinds of topics in our other mostly complimentary webinars. Here are two that are upcoming, one on June 9th and one June 23rd. But if you go to our site and just sign up to get our newsletter, you'll always be aware of the upcoming webinars. These two happen to be both around leadership, but we often have webinars focused on life topics, health topics, all kinds of stuff. And if you guys have a topic you'd love to see us take up, both Jill, Natalia, and I are happy to share that with other coaches who are always wanting to be sure that we're bringing relevant topics to the table. And I know we only have about 5 minutes left, but we're happy to answer any questions or help explain more about coaching. So please chime in, and thank you so much for being here today.
Easy. Thank you, ladies. That was wonderful. While people are still thinking of their questions, like I mentioned before, we will be sharing this recording along with some resources that we shared. I know, Betsy, that we also talked about different leadership webinars and workshops that we have coming up. So make sure you check out those. I'm going to put all of this, the recording, along with the resources, links, the links that we shared here, in the recap that we will be sending out tomorrow. So make sure you check all of that out. Usually these webinars are really awesome, really value content packed. So once everything settles, if any other questions come up, please go ahead and reply back to that email. I'll also include Betsy and Natalia's emails as well, and their LinkedIn. So basically everything that you need to stay in touch. But that way you can also ask them any questions as they come up, because we know that there's a lot that goes on. So anything that might come up after, you have their contact information.
Great. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
It's been a
Thank you all
pleasure.
so much.
Good luck. Good luck with whatever your next weeks and months look like in the office or out of the office.
Yeah, and remember to be compassionate and patient with yourself and others through this experience that we're all sharing.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a follow-up of this, come fall, maybe after summer, after people have already gone back to the office, as like a check-in. How's everyone doing going back to
we're
the
all
office?
learning. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great.
That's always a fun thing to do together, is we're all in the arena together.
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go. Great idea to do a check-in after we've returned to the office. So we might have to put that on the books for
We would love to do that.
down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but stay in touch so we hear what's going on and we have your content to share.
Yes. And let us know. That's a great reminder, Betsy. Yeah. Feel free to let us know. And if there are any of our, I know we have some clients on the call, but we also have our Slack channel that you can utilize, that you can use and ask any of our coaches any questions you want. You can engage with them, chat with them. That's another great way to keep us posted on how things are going. Getting back to the office, that way we can always provide that immediate help and guidance right there. But that can also help us build for a check-in on returning to the office too. So
Great.
Great.
Thanks all. Enjoy this
All
nice
right.
day.
Thanks everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Betsy and Natalia. You both are awesome. And thank you everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you around at another event sometime soon.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care.